Hi folks, meteorologist Matt Gray here with another edition of Brainstorm. And here on Thursday, and after another week of active weather, I figured it was time to look at a bit of the rain tally so far. As well, we know April showers bring May flowers and other good things, right? So we have overall had a lot of positive weather here in the last couple of weeks that is going to be somewhat helpful in regards to our drought situation, and just in regards overall to keeping a nice start to, or a nice spring season out ahead of our traditionally dry and fiery and smoky months in the summer. So the wetter that we can get the weather at this point in the year, that can be very, very helpful in keeping things a little bit calmer when it comes to summertime and into the early fall with fire season. So we are still in quite a active weather pattern, even though things are going to be much calmer for the next few days in the forecast. But we're still seeing this parade of storms that's going to, as soon as about 4 days from now, bring us more rain in the forecast, more much needed rain, and even a little bit of mountain snow to keep our snowpack going as long as possible. But not here to talk about snowpack. We're here to talk about some of the lowlands and the rain that we have, or rather have not, been getting recently. Now, so far, and that includes, as we're recording this on Thursday of the 21st of April, so we got some good amounts of rain on the 20th through the overnight. So we've got about 0.8 of an inch so far this April. We've got about a little less than a third of the month left to go. Average is about 1.25 inches, so we are well on pace with more storms in the forecast. As long as the water meter doesn't get cut off completely for the rest of the month, we're going to be doing fairly well, and we do have a shot to be at least right at average or even a little bit above. Once again, as long as we continue to see more of this active weather, or at least we have some regular rainstorms coming up every few days or so. So that is April showers so far. And why is this important that we're even close to the average? Well, we have really been struggling to get up to our 30-year averages, and that includes for all the 2022 when our averages were updated, and so they've actually come down a little bit since we are now working through new climate averages with a new decade. So here are the last 12 months worth of rain. And we can see the really brutal spring and summer of last year. One of the reasons why our drought situation got so bad. And the areas with the green arrows, with the dark green arrows, those are the only 3 months in the last 12 months. So we got about a quarter of the months on the record so far that have been above what the climactic average is over the last 30 years. Now, April, not there yet, but it does have a shot to get there. But as of right now, with a few days to go, obviously, we are not there quite yet. And it would be very nice if we could get there. Good news is springtime so far has been much, much better than the record dry spring we had last year. But unfortunately, and I talk about this a lot when I do drought stories, as I've been covering this basically through the entirety of this period on your screen, or at least since about July. This has, once you have a period as dry as we had last year, last spring and summer, it takes a lot of extra water, and it takes a long time to undo some of that damage. And so we can still find ourselves with problems as far as low water levels in the summertime. We can still find ourselves problems with very dried out vegetation. I mean, we had a kind of a dry, windy day about a week or two ago, and we ended up with a couple of little wildfires that sparked out. So some of those dry grasses and things, they are really still kind of suffering some of the effects here just over the long term as opposed to the short term. So let's talk a little bit more about that long term, because we have to come back, of course, to the climate issue. And by the way, here is the drought monitor, which has, increased at the start of this month for the first time since basically September or October. And so it looks like this is what this is going to be our starting point for the summertime. And so I do have some concerns that we're going to see drought, and perhaps severe or even exceptional drought, or start to spread again out of central Washington and back into the eastern Washington, and perhaps even into parts of Idaho will start to increase again. as we get into the dry months of the summer, unfortunately. And once again, this is not really anything to do with this year. It's about the cumulative effects from last year and us not having a super wet year. In fact, having a kind of average to a little bit dry year thus far in the inland Northwest. So I want to show you this long-term chart. And I'll pop this up full screen because it might be a little bit harder to see. But what we're seeing here is since basically all the rain every year in Spokane since 1950. Now, I'm only using since 1950 because, at least in the early days, there, in the 1800s and the early 1900s, a lot of the action and the recording was around Felts Field, which is basically almost in Spokane Valley. Now we're at Spokane Airport, so I wanted a bit more consistency in kind of where these rainfall measurements were being taken. So that way we didn't have some weird jumps or weird dips for no reason other than the fact that, well, the weather station got moved. So this is a fairly consistent record, and you can kind of see each year is very different. Some years are very dry, some years are pretty wet, but we're looking at the average overall. So this little squiggly black line here, this is the 30-year average. And so notice that it fluctuates a little bit more because basically it takes a year off, puts another year on. So it fluctuates a lot more when we have really big years like 1996 and when we have really dry years like 1985. But the overall trend from when this starts, for when the 30-year average is about 16.7 inches here in 1980, from 1950 to 1980. By the time we get to 2021, which, by the way, is one of the record driest in the past, 50, 60, 70 plus years here, 71 years here, you'll notice here that it's not a lot, but there is a small decrease in the 30-year moving average. Now, what's even more concerning is what we call here the regression line. And basically, this kind of is a line that puts all of the rainfall totals, and it makes a line that shows the overall trend in how things are going. Basically, where's a trend line you can put to where all these points, all these yearly data points are as close to this line as possible. And so you notice here that kind of in the beginning, we're up at about 17 inches and change. And now that regression line is getting about towards 15 or a little bit under 16 inches. And this, by the way, if we move this chart and we even go basically all the way out to the whole point of record, let's go all the way back into the 1880s. So you can see kind of the issues here of why the change, of how the change works, where we have this big dip in precipitation here in the 20s through the 40s, because we're moving our weather stations around. But even notice this. So the regression line here, 16.4, 16.1. So even in the longer term, where there are some data issues that make this not the best way to use it. We really have to, once again, get this shorter time frame that has more consistency because it's taking the measurements in the same place. There's still a little bit of a drop, and especially with the summertime, the averages for monthly rainfall dropped as well. So this is something that not only shows that we are gradually seeing drier conditions through the year overall around Spokane as the years have gone by, and can basically just show you that we are seeing at least a little bit of climate change in the data without even going into the other scientific deals beyond that. But I think the big thing here is that rain is becoming more and more precious, and it's getting to be something that we have to be very conscious of, and we really are going to see, I think, a lot of these periods where we get a very dry year and then we stay in a state of drought for a long time until we get a very big year, like, for example, 2017 or 2012 or 2006. So they do happen, but it takes some time to get them back. And I think compared to perhaps what has happened in the past, we're going to see a lot more of these drought conditions. We're going to be talking about drought a lot more, and we're going to have to adapt to overall drier conditions around the inland Northwest, where it's going to take more than one average year of wet weather to overcome some of these drought problems when we have really bad years. So that's our update. Some positives in the short term. In the long term, however, with summer right around the corner, the drought conditions definitely don't look like they're going away anytime soon. But at least the overall pattern here over the past several months, and I'll bring this back up, is at least better, even though it's still below average for most months. It's definitely a lot better, and we're in a lot better state than we were at this time last year, especially knowing what we know now with how things continued in May, June, July, and into August. So hopefully we'll keep the good times rolling into May and get some more good moisture before the summer really kind of kicks hold. We'll be tracking that for you here on the 4 News Now YouTube channel. So if you liked our little talk about some of the rain and what we're looking for as we progress through the rest of 2022, go ahead, give us a like, give us a subscribe. We give you all of your local headlines and things that matter to you here, as well as on our KXLY Plus channel and on KXLY.com. So yeah, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and we'll talk to you over the weekend with another edition of the Brainstorm. Have a good one.